Welcome everyone. This is episode 26 of the Transmaxxing podcast, and today's topic is a response to the incel to trans pipeline and Inside Mari video. The video is focused on a trans female who grew up in an environment who pushed her to be masculine and compete as a male. It's also focused on the Inside Mari manga and how it relates to the incel to trans supposed pipeline and the experience some people have trying to live a life of inceldom to live a much better life as a trans female.
So honestly, the video is actually really interesting. It definitely gives perspective on how society treats men with gender dysphoria, or treats as people who want to transition in society. Every single time they had no inclination to want to be more feminine or want to transition, they just got pushed back from everyone around them. At first, they're getting bullied for being more feminine or not as masculine as other boys in their area, around them. And then the second time, they went to the therapist, and the therapist well, you're just a crossdresser, you should stay a man. And then they got into the religion part, and they started feeling a lot of shame for having these cross-gender desires. And then they experience sexual assault. It's just a lot of things that make people not want to transition when they think it'll be better for them, you know?
Yeah, especially in the past, people were pushed away from transitioning, and they wanted them to do all these other things like try cross-dressing, or maybe you're just gay. You all know all those bullshit suggestions that people love to make to dysphoric trans people who really have to transition to live the best life they can.
Yeah. I really liked it. It was actually kind of inspiring, honestly. Especially when she went into the actual manga, I was this is actually kind of interesting. It really paints Autogynephilia as a beautiful tragedy, which is kind of crazy. I mostly enjoyed the manga part, honestly. I prefer that over her life story, honestly, because I feel the manga is more introspective and interesting, versus someone's life story is very straightforward. This happened, then this happened, not anything actual deep or
Yeah.
A lot of the video has very much resonated with me and how I lived growing up as well. I had a lot of similar experiences as her. Other than I wasn't really in a religious environment, and there wasn't as many people pushing me back, so I'm very thankful for that.
That's good. I'm glad they accepted you and didn't give you pushback for wanting the transition.
Yeah. There seems to be a major consistent factor that a lot of people who transition early on didn't really know what it's actually about, or they could actually do that. You hear that a lot where it's they didn't know they could become a woman.
Mm-hmm. They always wanted to be more feminine, but they didn't know there was even an option.
Yeah.
And even when they did find out about it, they were reading those shitty books in the library that painted trans as this very specific thing, and that didn't really fit into that very specific true trans narrative.
Yeah, I experienced that too. When I was younger, I definitely wanted to be more feminine and be more womanly, but I thought, well, I don't hate being a boy, or being seen as a boy, or be seen as a man. That doesn't really bother me. So I'm well, trans people want to chop their penis off, and they hate their lives, and they're just looking at their bodies, they just want to start crying. And I didn't really feel that, honestly. So I didn't feel I was trans at first.
Exactly. That was the big thing for me as well. I transitioned quite a bit later. It was very much a fascinating, loving how I looked when I saw myself as portraying as feminine. I still never had a problem with how I looked as the only thing I didn't like was having short hair. That was a thing that
Same.
I hate short. Yeah.
That's so relatable. I just maybe I'll be happier with long hair. I know that was to be feminine in our minds, but we didn't perceive it that way. We started to look better, you know?
Yeah.
I am so glad that I stopped cutting my hair, and I didn't even transition. Having longer hair as a male is kinda better, to be honest.
So true.
There are a couple of things that she actually got wrong in the video. The first thing she got wrong was that she thought that I was the one who wrote that first instead to Stacy testimonial, which wasn't the case. It was originally written by someone else. I don't know actually who that was, and it's hard to find out much info about them because I actually deleted their account afterwards. Though they didn't really post much on Reddit. I did find her testimonial to be very much interesting, and it did come off as true, to be honest.
She thinks you're trans. She thought, like, oh yeah, the Transmaxxing manifesto was made by a trans woman. I'm like, that's so inaccurate, but I guess, like, all the information's, like, so correct, like, it's kind of hard to perceive you not as a trans woman, you know? Like, if you know everything about being trans, like, most cis men don't really, like, think that, you know? They don't know that much information.
This was actually just the second version of the Transmaxxing manifesto that she showed in the video sections of. And despite being so early, I actually got a lot of stuff right even then.
Well, it was enough to get a video. It was good enough to get a video.
Yeah, but ironically, most of the stuff that she actually showed in the video from the Transmaxxing manifesto was actually written originally by other people. The only things written by me was the now rather outdated HRT guide and extracting resources from Mail's part, where I wrote most of what she showed in the video. It's maybe a shame she didn't use a newer version of the Transmaxxing manifesto with better HRT advice, because her video got over 700,000 views.
She went over a part about like how incel ideology will ruin some of these women's lives. I definitely thought that was a true case in general as well, seeing these individuals come in like obsessed over doomer culture. It's an unhealthy lifestyle. That's how come I had to make the Goddess Empress theory to ensure that incels have to renounce their inceldom. That demands these incels renounce their inceldom because there is nothing good that comes from that doomer culture or even holding that label.
That's so true.
She did claim to have visited Discord servers where former incels were instead obsessing over not being feminine enough facially rather than not being masculine enough. I don't know if she actually visited the Transmaxxing Discord specifically, or if she just visited other servers connected to 4chan. But I'm not sure if this is really due to some people here being former incels. I think it's more due to gender dysphoria, where because people have gender dysphoria, they are uncomfortable with facial features that other people do not find problematic, because they have these mental issues to deal with causing dysphoria.
I think it's a bit of both, where it's like on places like 4chan, you get people who try to be overly critical on top of your gender dysphoria being like at stakes as you share these selfies, you know?
Yeah, it's hard to tell how much of that is due to some people having been incel in the past and therefore obsessing over facial features, and how much is simply that some people have gender dysphoria pushing them to feminize themselves further even though they already pass facially. There can be paranoia as well if you live in a transphobic environment where any masculine trait can lead to trouble. There are even cis females who get into trouble for having too masculine a face. There was even a female who died because of that.
Oh my god, I heard about that. She got murdered by some random guy because he thought she was trans. Like, that's actually insane. And she didn't even look trans at all. She looked like a cis woman. And she was a cis woman. crazy.
I think it's very important to live in a supportive environment because it's so much harder when everyone around you is pushing you in the wrong direction and not helping you. Some people might even try to sabotage your transition if you, despite all the pushback, try to transition anyway in an environment that doesn't really support it. We humans are supposed to work together to overcome hardship. This is how we evolved. It's so much harder when you try to do everything yourself. And this is very important. You really need the support from other people a lot of the time to push forward when you're facing hardships.
The environment's just so... You need it for, like, just, like, socialization, support, and being able to just, like, express your genuine self.
I actually mentioned something really interesting about the Inside Mari author in her video. The Inside Mari author expressed that he, at least for a while, wanted to become fully female, not just female on the outside, but female down to the soul. Or more accurately, he wanted to have a female brain. You might feel like transitioning isn't enough for you to really get that full female experience you're actually looking for. Notice that trans people in general often feel like they are never good enough, that they will never experience what they're actually truly desiring.
Yeah, like, I definitely understand, like, his perspective as far as that goes. Like, the idea that, oh, if I wasn't born female and I never, like, experienced nothing about femaleness and, like, femininity, that, like, you'll never be able to actually portray that or live that life. Because, like, you'll never understand the true experience. Like, I think that's, like, why a lot of people don't transition, because, like, they feel like it's just gonna be so unauthentic and, like, it's gonna be obvious that they're an imposter and, like, they're not gonna really have any, like, benefits from transitioning. Which isn't really true, because, like, there's a lot of unfeminine women out there who, like, didn't really experience a lot of things that are, like, I guess, associated with female coming of age. Like, some girls don't get a period. Some girls didn't really have that many friends growing up. Some girls aren't that feminine, like, overall, like, having their mom teach them how to do their hair and stuff. So, I don't understand how they feel isolated as far as, like, femininity goes. Because it's so easy to, like, gain the most socialization if you move towards, like, actually learning it. And, like, learning what's right and what's wrong as far as, like, femaleness and, like, womanhood.
Yeah, and do not forget that HRT will actually feminize the brain as well. It's not merely cosmetic changes you're getting from that.
That's a very big, for sure. It has helped a lot. Like, when she went over the manga and stuff, I had similar experiences of that. Even though for me it was more in college, where it's like, you know, my first time being, like, in more, like, feminine social areas, and, like, it can be a little nerve-wracking your first few times doing it, just because you're, like, brought up in such a way that it's taught to be like that, you know? And so it took me a long time. There was a lot of difficulties for me to actually get used to, like, being a woman in that position in a public setting.
Mm-hmm.
She did talk about the transvestigiality hypothesis, and here the author of Vintologi actually lied, claiming that I supported that hypothesis, which isn't true, and I will never lend my support to such weak hypothesis with basically zero real evidence behind it. The idea is that maybe if you're incel, this will, like, induce gender dysphoria. I'm not sure exactly what they mean by that, if they mean, like, physical dysphoria or social dysphoria. I mean, obviously, like, if you're incel, you suffer socially because you're male, but I wouldn't classify that as gender dysphoria. That's just a disadvantage with being male. It's not neurological because you suffer regardless. Like, unless you like being incel, which nobody really does.
Being a failure as a man can be a reason to transition, but I don't think it's ever gonna cause gender dysphoria in such a way.
I think what might be happening is that people who fail as males are more likely to pursue a medical transition because they don't really have anything to lose. They don't have any girlfriend who might leave them. They don't have any children who might react poorly to their father transitioning to a female. They don't have friends who might become weird about it. They don't really have to worry about losing social status or the friendships because they don't really have that in the first place. But if you are more successful as a male, then you have more to lose, and this might make you less willing to pursue a medical transition where you might lose friendship, wife, and even a job.
Because, like, if you're already, like, lacking in manhood and masculinity, and, like, everyone knows that, you transitioning or being more feminine, like, it's not going to be a shock to anyone. It's like, oh, yeah, he was a beta male, he was a failed male, he was not going to be a guy anyway, so them being a girl now makes sense. Like, so that's so true. I think they're more susceptible to transition, but, like, it's not, like, guaranteed to have more gender dysphoria or anything. Like, if they have gender dysphoria, it's just more likely to transition versus, like, someone who's, like, super manly and a Chad with gender dysphoria.
I think there might be like an opposite kind of effect happening where it's like perhaps some of these people who inhibit these gender dysphoria fail at being a man more so than getting it from being a failure, you know?
Yeah, there's also an obvious explanation. If you have gender dysphoria, everything is going to be much harder, and you might not be able to even enjoy a good sex life. It might make dating a lot harder. Not only do you have to deal with trying to attract females and be successful, you have to do it while also having gender dysphoria. This is going to cause a lot of males to just fail at masculinity because of that dysphoria constantly making everything harder for them. They might become unwilling to even pursue relationships and sex in the first place because of that dysphoria. You might even then identify as incel because you're not in a relationship but you kind of want to, but also you're not really doing your best to get there. One interesting thing she mentioned was that she actually liked getting feminized borders because then she could hide the fact that she actually wanted it all along.
Yeah, she said, like, when she was in high school, or, like, middle school, I'm not sure which point this was, that, like, her female, like, friends, like, dressed her up like a girl, put makeup on her, because she was just so petite and feminine and cute, and, like, they had a feminine nature to themselves, so it just made it, like, easier to feminize them, and, like, she really enjoyed it. I found that actually fascinating. Like, I actually experienced a similar thing in the high school, like, where I was, like, transitioning medically, like, some girls would be like, oh, they would see me as, like, less of a threat and, like, want to be closer to me, and also, like, want to feminize me as well. Like, they'll see me acting feminized myself and like, oh, do you want to learn to do eyeliner? Can I paint your nails? Because they see it as, like, an activity, something fun to do, which is actually interesting. Like, it's actually kind of interesting how a lot of women are willing to feminize, like, young men or, like, young boys, but, like, as far as feminizing a grown man, it's, like, disgusting to them. Like, there's so few women into, like, forced feminization. But, like, a girl will probably paint her gay best friend's nails or something. If they're, like, in high school or something.
Yeah, it's often stuff like that. It's very rare that this female will actually push people towards medically transitioning. It's usually superficial stuff like makeup, clothing, and superficial things like that.
Yeah. They're more likely to bring you down the path of being a cross-dresser, and then that kind of, as we've explained in other podcasts, fails horribly.
Yeah, you can only be a pretty cross-dresser for so long when you become manly and ugly.
I actually found her video to be a bit frustrating to watch because there were always those very obvious clues and a very obvious solution to solve her problems, and she just refused to take that obvious solution for so long.
I think she wanted to take it, but, like, she didn't know it was an option, and when she felt like it was an option, she felt like she wasn't that thing. Like, just like me and Val experience, like, once we knew what trans was, we didn't really feel like we fit in that box as far as being like a transsexual or trans person. But we did know we wanted to transition.
Like one of the first times coming out, like one of the people close to me asked if I was like gonna get SRS. That like scared me off so much.
Yeah, because we don't feel like that. We don't have those urges. So if people say, "Oh yeah, you're gonna get the sex changed and you're gonna I don't know, start dating men when you're dating women, you originally dated women, or like you're gonna start doing X, Y, and Z," like, "Oh, are you gonna start getting your nails super long? Are you start wearing makeup all the time? Are you gonna wear dresses all the time?" Like all those things are like just things that like they expect of someone to do. Because like, what's to say? I don't know. A trans woman is like, I don't know, doesn't have gender dysphoria originally, and like she likes maybe not wearing makeup all the time, or she doesn't like wearing nails or something, or she's like wearing makeup all the time. Then they're like, "Oh, well, you don't fit this and this and this and this box, so you don't really qualify as trans, really."
Yeah, I felt very scared going to the psychiatrists and stuff for that reason, because it was definitely more like a textbook case of autogynephilia instead of like what they consider gender dysphoria. It went a lot better because, I girl moded for so long and I had like a pretty feminine voice to them that they didn't even like question anything. They were just like, yep. But yeah, I could imagine how much harder it'd be if you didn't know like what to actually say to them, just being denied. That rejection's hurtful, to being like, "Nah, you're not trans."
I've had that rejection a lot of times actually. When I went to get my letter for my top surgery, my therapist told me that he doesn't think I'm trans. And I'm like, "Well, I look like a woman." And he says, "Well, everything you're telling me, you kind of come off as more of a gay man." And I just felt like so, like, honestly, like he looked into my soul or something, and like, so I wasn't really trans. And that's like my biggest fear as far as transitioning goes, that like someone will be able to tell I'm a faker or a pretender.
I remember when I was 15 and at school they talked about SRS and how it was actually done to trans people. That if anything is going to discourage people from transitioning when they are going into those very graphic details. They never explained that a lot of trans people never had and do not want that surgery in the first place.
Like almost every guy I've told I was trans always assumes I'm post-op. He's like, "Oh, like you're transgender, like when they chop your dick off and make it a vagina?" And I'm like, why is that the first thing people think when they think trans? That's crazy.
Yeah, because of that early education, so-called about trans people, which was really bad.
So they think that's like the only way you can be trans, really.
Yeah, it's that or gender identity politics with nothing in between.
That's so true.
And there's like a lot of dangers of like getting repressed, becoming a repressed just from like the sex negative society we live in, especially through religion. Very forceful into like making people try to be a man. Clearly they were never meant to be.
Yeah, I think they want to be utilitarian. Like, think of it like this: the less males that transition, the more male like labor they can use, like male bodies they can use in like, I don't know, warehouses, or I don't know, fucking construction sites. So a male body is a pro for most people in society. Like, it's an extra like laborer that has like physical strength in their mind.
Yeah, another taxpayer who can work in a coal mine and pay like 30% to the government.
That's what a man is. As far as like, according to like people who are anti-trans, that's like, oh, less trans equals more laborers.
Yeah, everyone has to work so we can maintain social security for the elderly. And as a thank you for that, all those old people vote for conservative policies so young people do not want. So we might, because of that, get transphobic legislation as a thank you for the young people actually contribute to the society. The American gerontocracy denies people under 65 Medicare, forcing them into expensive insurance programs who might not even cover what they need. That's pretty much it. They want you to be a slave for other people rather than working towards what's actually good for you. Like the military, for example, they want you as a male to risk your life and your health, potentially losing limbs, getting disabled, getting post-traumatic stress disorder, and all those other nasty things that can happen to you there for basically nothing. You don't really get paid much, and you will earn probably more working somewhere else. She actually covered the male gender role is broken section in her video, which does go into how society wants males to stay masculine and slave away for other people.
I think that's really sad, honestly. I feel like we should want more for men's society versus being workhorses. Like, I understand being productive, but like, there's ways to be productive where like, I think like we need to give in some more automation for like, more people could work less physical jobs and like have more time for themselves and like their own like quality of life. Like nowadays, like people who work in factories have like such long hours and they have very little time off or very little time themselves. Like they'll literally go to work, go home, go straight to sleep, and wake up, go to work again with no free time at all. It's crazy. And like they think that's socially acceptable because like I guess men are supposed to be like work machines and like be fine with having like not less social lives because men are supposed to be less social.
Something I have realized is that we're actually needing that less and less. As we continue to make technological progress, there will be less and less need for physical labor. There will be more automation. Even with war, it's becoming more technical, and this is hopefully something that will not continue on forever, because once we have a world government, there will no longer be a need for millions of males to fight against each other and die in wars. War is not something that males for the most part naturally want to engage in. It's instead a result of having multiple, more than one competing state.
I guess we could talk the trutrans narrative thing. Because there's a part where, like, in the video, where, like, she talks about how, like, a trans woman's worst fear is to, like, be seen as, like, that they know that they're a man pretending to be a woman, and how they're a man that's fetishized a woman's body, and, like, how a true trans person would never think that way. Like, this whole mentality that, like, true transsexuals are, like, these pure fucking angels, so, like, would never use their dick or never get aroused or never or, like any sexuality, and there just be these pure things that are like asexual. Like this shaming of like sexualizing your femininity as a woman that is like wrong as a trans woman, and how it makes you a fake trans. Like I never really understood that honestly. Because like there's plenty of women who like sexualize their own bodies or like find themselves sexy. What's wrong with a trans woman doing that?
Yeah, of course. Autogynephilia is very common in females in general, but we live in societies where those sexual desires are often not socially accepted, especially not for people who are born male. This is in part due to Christianity that view sexual pleasure as something sinful, kinda. And this is very much a problem in general, because even in countries where Christianity is no longer itself very popular, the Christian morality still lives on, including sexual morality. Then when trans females have those sexual fantasies, it's viewed as something illegitimate, and people feel like sexual reasons for transitioning will be invalid, and that you will need to have gender dysphoria to be valid as a trans female, or otherwise you will be a degenerate pervert. But as she explained in the video, even if she was a degenerate pervert, her pain was still very much real.
Yeah. I still don't think it's immoral though. And I think it's really sad people think that, honestly.
Yeah, but keep in mind that if you have grown up your entire life viewing sex as something shameful and sexual desire as a shameful thing, especially if you want to be feminine as a male, then of course it's going to be hard to get over that.
Yeah, that's so true.
I think she did do a good job of explaining how many trans people feel who do not fit into that more traditional trutrans narrative. It was especially moving to hear about how HRT pretty much saved her life.
I literally cried. I'm not gonna lie.
Her story about being saved really illustrates that what we are doing is the right thing, because we are saving lives by promoting Transmaxxing, and this is something that we have to remember. This is not just about online fame or mere influence. We're actually helping people live better lives as females, and this is something we should be proud about.
That's so
Yeah.
true.
When it comes to the overarching parts of like things, it seems like a lot of trans women have troubles with, like not actually feeling like they're trans, or like not thinking that being trans. That's where Transmaxxing comes in and helping spread awareness, making people understand, like better make a choice that will better improve their life for many.
There was actually someone who wrote in the comment section that she realized she was trans thanks to watching our videos.
Really? Wait, what's the channel called?
At the moment it seems like she's merely using her channel to write comments. She hasn't any videos that we can see and watch at the moment.
Oh, okay. That's so cool. We're actually making an impact on people, which is actually really beautiful.
We have to realize that all the work we are putting into this community is actually helping people, and now we are seeing the results from that work. Okay, this marks the end of episode 26 of the Transmaxxing podcast. Make sure to comment below and maybe like this video. Have a nice day, everyone!